The Jets were blown out in Arizona on Sunday. And look, I understand losses happen. I can forgive losing. I can even forgive being blown out, but I cannot forgive what's going on with the New York Jets right now. And I'll explain why today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Monday, November 11th, 2024. Very happy 92nd birthday to my grandmother. I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. Big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. And today, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. The New York Jets were blown out on Sunday in Week 10 action by the Arizona Cardinals. The final score was 31-6. I did a postcast last night after the game, and I said, I don't think that the word has been invented in the English language to describe how bad the Jets were in this game. I mean, you could use horrendous, you can use pathetic, but none of them, I think, really do justice to what a terrible performance this was for the New York Jets. And at 3-7, I think it's fair to say this is an awful football team. We had a very short reprieve last week when the Jets beat the Texans. And after that game, I said, enjoy the next 10 days because we know this is probably not a very good football team, but we at least had 10 days to dream about maybe the Jets turning their season around. Well, we saw that it really was just a very short reprieve for a really, really bad football team. And the reasons the Jets are bad are numerous. We let's go down the list right now because there's so many reasons the Jets are bad. And look, I can forgive being a bad football team. Most of the, half the league is bad. Over half the league misses the playoffs in any given season. So most teams have unsuccessful seasons. That you can forgive. So why are the Jets bad? Well, obviously the team is very poorly coached. If you look at that performance yesterday, if you look at their performance through the season, this team has bad coaching. And firing Robert Saleh was never going to fix the coaching problem for this team because you were going with a bunch of Robert Saleh assistants. And Jeff Ulbrich said the team wasn't ready to play. And he took blame for it. That's about the only good thing I could say for Jeff Ulbrich because there's no excuse for a team to look like that. And Ulbrich was right. The team was not ready to play. And that is on him, at least to some degree. And that's been a recurring theme of the season. It was a recurring theme while Saleh was here. It continues to be a recurring theme after Ulbrich's here. And if anything, getting rid of Saleh made it worse because the defense has clearly gotten worse under Ulbrich. And I'm at the point where I think I'm ready to say that it's clear Saleh was the brains behind the defense. It's clear that Ulbrich did not have a lot to do with this team's defensive success over the last 3 years because things have just completely fallen apart without Saleh. And look, I was of the mindset that Saleh was a bad coach. And I was also of the mindset that this defense was not as good as its numbers early in the season, but this is a really bad defense. And it's a really poorly coached team. There's really no way around that right now. If we're going to be honest, the roster is not nearly as good as people made it out to be before the season. This is a roster that's like great 3 to 5 years ago. It's the classic roster. If it's 2019 or 2021, this roster is awesome. Because you have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, you've got Devontae Adams at wide receiver, you have Tyron Smith at left tackle. Hey, 5 years ago, that's awesome. 5 years ago, this is a great team. It's not a great team right now. And, I think we need to retire the state. I hear it consistently through the fan base, the statement that this is a really talented roster that's being messed up by coaching. Now, it's being messed up by coaching. There's no question about that. But this roster is just not that good. A lot of the guys that we're counting on are old. And I just named you the 3 biggest guys on that roster because, Rodgers is increasingly looking like he's washed up. And that was a horrible performance by Rodgers. It's like he has no interest in trying to throw the deep ball. In the first half of the game, the Jets had an 11-play field goal drive and a 12-play field goal drive. And Ulbrich was praising that in his halftime interview with the sideline reporter. Well, the thing is, the reason these drives are taking so long is that you can't hit any big plays in the passing game. And you can't keep relying on 11, 12-play scoring drives because eventually something's going to go wrong. In both instances, the Jets stalled in the red zone. You can't ask an offense to execute 11, 12 straight plays. And unfortunately, the talent's just not there for this team right now because a lot of the guys who are counted on to be big players, a lot of the big names just aren't producing like big names anymore because they're not capable of it. They're in their 30s. They're too old. That's the risk. And we talked about this a lot through the offseason. That's the risk of going with all these old guys, these big name old guys, because they can regress very quickly. And that is exactly what's happened to this football team. So the roster's not that good. The other thing is, like, the young guys on this team who were supposed to be talented are not playing like it this year. I mean, Garrett Wilson's had his moments. Garrett Wilson was shut down in this game. Now, part of that may have been the quarterback play because Rodgers was so bad. But Sauce Gardner's just completely fallen off the face of the earth. Breece Hall had a decent game, but I think we see Breece Hall's not going to be the top 5 back we were hoping him to be. The young talent on this team, is it overrated? Is it being dragged down by the rest of the team's failures? I don't know, but all I know is that this is not a team that's looking like it has superior young talent. And the guys, the big name old guys on this team aren't producing at all. And on some level, this stuff I can forgive. I can understand it because it happens. Maybe it doesn't happen like this. Maybe you don't make as many bad decisions if you have an owner who has any degree of competence. Because a lot of these decisions that the Jets made and a lot of the way this team was constructed can be laid directly at the feet of the owner. And we can get into him. We'll get into him a lot in the days and weeks ahead. But you know what? There are teams that disappoint. Every year it feels like there's some team with a lot of flashy talent that made a lot of big moves in the offseason, the team that quote unquote won the offseason, and they don't produce. That happens. There are teams with bad coaching. Most of the league has bad coaching. That happens. There are a lot of teams where you have young guys you have high expectations for, and the young guys don't meet the expectations. That happens. What doesn't happen and what is not acceptable is the complete lack of effort the team showed in this game. What's not acceptable is the complete lack of discipline this team showed in this game. And I should not use the phrase in this game because it's been an ongoing saga through the entire season of the Jets not looking like a professional football team. Look, I'm not expecting you to win every game. This Jets team, I'm not even expecting them to win many games, but I am expecting effort. I am expecting this team to try. I am expecting this team to try and look like a cohesive unit. And you're not seeing that from this football team. And I think back to last week, the rookie Malachi Corley dropping the ball on the 1 yard line instead of scoring a touchdown because he was celebrating prematurely. And I could not get over I know people want to let him off the hook because he's a rookie, but look, a rookie should know not to do that. I was angered by Corley's lack of professionalism, but thinking this through and watching the team in this game, I now understand why he acts that way because he looks at the veterans. He looks at the guys who have been here for a while and they don't play with any professionalism. How many times is Michael Clemens going to not read his own read? Is he looking for the big play? Javon Kinlaw also. Javon Kinlaw, I'm watching this guy. I'm convinced that this guy is just trying to pad his stats. He's looking to get upfield as fast as possible to try and get a sack. And if the quarterback hands it off, it's going to be a big run, but Kinlaw acts like he doesn't care. Hasson Reddick, where's this guy been? What's this guy been doing? I almost have this vision of Hasson Reddick being on the phone with his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, today saying, Drew, you told me there wouldn't be this much running. What's going on, man? Because that's the way it looks. That's the way it looks when he's on the field. Sauce Gardner missing a tackle that would have ended the drive, a critical drive. It was Arizona's 3rd drive of the game. They had gone down the field twice like nothing. And the Jets defense was finally on the verge of getting off the field. And Sauce Gardner, who has McBride wrapped up, somehow doesn't bring him to the ground. Arizona extends the drive and scores again. That was a turning point in the game because the Jets defense finally would have gotten the stop. Maybe they could have built some confidence. Maybe that would stabilize the game for the Jets. But Sauce Gardner, who was an exemplary player the first 2 years, acting like he doesn't care. It's not just that it's not a physical error. I mean, I understand missed tackles are sometimes physical error. That just feels like he wasn't trying. Michael Carter II, right before halftime, there was a play on the sideline, and this was in Arizona's field goal drive where I said this on the postcast yesterday. The Jets got lucky that Arizona decided that all they wanted was a field goal because if they'd wanted a touchdown, they would have gotten it. But Carter II's defending the sideline, and Kyler Murray hits a pass to Michael Wilson. Carter has a chance to tackle him in bounds, force Arizona to burn their last time out. They don't do it. And you just saw consistently no effort. Guys guys trying to pad their stats. Guys not showing any effort trying to make tackles. Guys, quitting. That team quit. I know that's a very explosive accusation to make, but I don't think it's unfair. Watch that game and tell me that team played with any degree of effort. And you know something? It's on the coaching, but it's also on the players because these are professional football players. And I don't care. You know what? That looked like a U-Haul game. There's a saying in the NFL, a U-Haul game. It's usually week 17, week 18 when you're out of the playoffs, and a lot of the players don't live in the city that they played, so they've loaded up all their furniture into a U-Haul and are getting ready to take it out of town. Those games I understand because the season's over. We're in week 10. And this was a chance for the Jets to actually, make a move in the AFC playoff race because Denver lost. The Jets, if they had won that game, would have only been one game out of the final playoff spot. Now, it still would have been tough because they're a game out with 7 to go and Denver has the tiebreaker. But they at least would have had a shot, and they acted like they didn't care. All these big names, all these guys who talked Super Bowl, all these guys who talked about after the Houston game how the season was turned around, acted like they just couldn't care less whether the team won or not. They couldn't care less if the team was competitive. They're just there to cash paychecks. I know it's an explosive accusation. That's what I saw. That's what you saw too. And it's difficult to find any silver linings for this. As we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets, we'll talk about what makes this a singularly disappointing season because there's nothing you can look at with hope for the future for this team right now. Unlike past situations. We'll compare those past situations to the current situation the Jets are in as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan is not just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing Jets game, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for superfans like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot, and the fans who actually sit through watching the Jets for 4 quarters, which is a really difficult thing. You need energy to watch the Jets. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy, especially being a Jets fan. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. And that's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to keep you fueled through the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best place to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL. It's one word with no space, LOCKEDONNFL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you every day. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. New episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. So 5 days a week, we talk about how bad this team is, unfortunately. This is maybe the most disappointing season in franchise history for the New York Jets when you factor in everything, when you factor in Aaron Rodgers, when you factor in all the big names they had. Quite frankly, when you factor in the way this team hyped itself up. This team has spent a lot of time telling you how great they are. They've spent a lot of time painting a rosy picture of how things are, about how we're going to turn things around, especially after that game over Houston. I mean, you heard it. You even heard it during the broadcast about how the Jets felt like the schedule opened up for them. Well, they forgot that they were going out to play a really tough Arizona team, an Arizona team that was playing really well, a gritty Arizona team, a smash-mouth Arizona team, a team that likes to run the ball on offense. Arizona pretty much took it to the Jets in this game. The Jets really had no opportunities to do much of anything because, and part of it was the Jets just showed no effort in this game. This was an unbelievable performance by the New York Jets. As I said earlier, look, I can live with losing. I can live with getting blown out because that does happen. I mean, even great teams get blown out once or twice. There's only been one team in the history of the league that has finished the season with a perfect record. That was the 72 Miami Dolphins. Every team's going to have bad games. Every year there are disappointing teams, but not like this. Not when you have a group of guys who are high paid with big names who act like they don't care. And I think that's what makes this tough because I think that a lot of fans can deal with a bad season if they see it as a building block to something bigger. You know, I think back to 2020 when obviously it was a horrible season with Adam Gase and the Jets went 2-14 that year. But you know what? They were at least going to get a good draft pick. Maybe they get a good quarterback out of it. The next year, 2021, obviously Zach Wilson showed some signs that things were not going to work out early in the season. But you know what? You knew it was a young team. There were some guys who maybe would grow into good players. You're getting a lot of experience for young guys. You're kind of like letting it roll with a bunch of guys in their first and second year. And you also had a lot of draft picks. And again, the team was rebuilding at that point, or at least the team claimed it was rebuilding at that point. So you saw a potential brighter future. If the Jets this season made the playoffs and got to the divisional rounds and lost a tight game, you could say, okay, we'll bring everybody back for one more run next year. This is losing without a purpose. I mean, this was supposed to be the year. The Jets, look, I don't know that the Jets necessarily needed to win the Super Bowl this year to have it be a successful season. I think I think you can make the argument fairly that maybe they did, but you could also make an argument that they did not necessarily need to win the Super Bowl this year. We could get into debates again, lose a tight game in the divisional round, lose a tight game in the AFC Championship game. There's something to be said for making the Super Bowl because the Jets have only done that once in franchise history. But I think we can all agree that this is just a complete failure. The Rodgers era is going to go down as one of the biggest busts in recent NFL history. In fact, the Jets right now are lucky that the Deshaun Watson trade happened and the Russell Wilson trade happened because those trades were both worse. But those are about the only two moves in recent NFL history that were worse than the Jets trading for Aaron Rodgers. When you factor in everything that went into it, you factor in that the Jets gave up so many resources to try and construct microwave. And that's really the only phrase to use it. They tried to microwave a contender. They tried to take a team that was not a contender and make it happen overnight. And the only way you can do that is take a lot of risks on older players. And when you factor in the Jets, catered to Rodgers to such an extensive degree, bringing in his favorite receivers, bringing in his favorite offensive coordinator. The Jets rebuilt their roster around a guy who was 39 years old at the time they traded for him. And I understand that, look, I know he got injured last year, and that's probably playing some role in his decline, but he was already in decline at the point they traded for him. He was coming off the worst season of his career in 2022. And his major stats had already been declining for 2 years. So I don't think you can look back on this and say the injury was just bad luck, that they destroyed everything. They've catered to this guy to a ridiculous degree. I mean, he essentially kicked Mike Williams off the team. Mike Williams goes to Pittsburgh. His first game, he catches the game-winning touchdown and is more productive than Davante Adams was in this game. It's not just that you're losing. It's a question of where we're going right now. The Jets right now are going to have a very tight cap situation going forward. They're going to be down draft picks. They've already been down draft picks. And the thing about missing draft picks is that you don't really notice missing draft picks until like year 2 or year 3, because that's when those guys are really supposed to start producing. And the Jets right now are going to be short a bunch of young players because they kept trading all these day 2 picks for Rodgers, for his friends, for Hasson Reddick. And beyond that, I just think this team is very difficult to root for, in part because they play like that, where they act like they don't care. You see a bunch of guys who are just like chasing stats, guys who are not executing their assignments as the play was designed. And part of that's on the coaching, but part of it's on the players. These are professional football players who want to go out and do their job. This is not a group of like homegrown players who, have a lot of goodwill banked. If Aaron Rodgers is having this season with Green Bay, the Packers fans are going to be more forgiving because Rodgers has given them so much good through the years. Aaron Rodgers has given the Jets no good. All Aaron Rodgers has been a distraction. Last year he came in, he got injured, and he created controversy after controversy. He starts feuds with late night talk show hosts. He spends the entire season playing up the idea he's going to return when we know that's never going to happen. Just thing after thing with Aaron Rodgers, but no production on the field, and that's just true across the board. I mean, look, I don't blame guys for seeking the most money they can get, but Hasson Reddick, like this guy's really difficult to root for if you're a Jets fan. Davante Adams, this guy's been here a couple of weeks. He's yelling at everybody. He gives the speech that they say is going to, the latest version of the thing that was going to turn the season around. Goes out and does nothing in this game. And even our young guys like Sauce Gardner are regressing in this situation. There's very little hope for the Jets to turn this around quickly. And even if they can, you don't know what the owner is going to do, because the owner took a situation that was actually in pretty decent shape 2 years ago, where they had this great rookie class in 2022 and completely torched it, completely burnt everything to the ground because he thought he was smarter than everybody. He thought he knew what the team needed. He thought they were going to get a quarterback and it was going to change everything. So even if the Jets do everything right, I have no faith that the owner will do anything other than destroy it. It just feels really bleak right now. Even in that 2021 team, which had very little talent, you had young guys that played hard. They weren't very good, but they played hard. At least as a fan, if your team stinks, but you have guys who are showing some spunk, some guys who are showing some heart, some hustle. That's something. This is a bunch of old guys who are just collecting paychecks. It's like 53 independent contractors right now. This is not a football team. This is a collection of 53 individuals who are all just trying to get a paycheck. It's just so difficult to watch. It's so difficult to root for as a fan. Now, head here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about what the Jets can do going forward. Look, there's nothing that can save the team this year, but there are a couple moves I'd like to see that can at least make this team easier to watch. I'll tell you what they are as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more. Save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. Episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a punch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. They'll get you started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Incredibly, I can't believe this, the Jets are actually 3.5-point favorites at home over the Colts in Week 11. That seems like easy money if you want to bet Indianapolis. Again, FanDuel.com is the place to get in on the action because you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Monday. The New York Jets were utterly humiliated on Sunday in Week 10 action against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals beat them 31-6, and that score may have not expressed the full extent of Arizona's dominance because it felt like in the fourth quarter, like Arizona's offense just stopped playing. They felt like they had all the points they needed, and there was no need to further humiliate the Jets. The only stops the Jets got in the game were near the end of the second quarter. Arizona kicked a field goal. Again, that was because Arizona just decided to settle for a field goal. It felt like the way they managed the clock, they just ran out of time. If they had actually tried to go down the field, they probably would have scored a touchdown. And then in the fourth quarter, when the Cardinals just felt like they had enough points, it was a completely dominant performance by Arizona. Jets could not do anything on either side of the ball. The offense was dismal. I mean, Aaron Rodgers had a brutal performance. Aaron Rodgers just seems like he's afraid to take a hit right now. Only threw for 151 yards on 35 attempts, a 4.3 average. Dismal. Garrett Wilson was shut down in this game, and maybe it was because of the quarterback. Devontae Adams also did absolutely nothing in this game. Devontae Adams ended with 6 catches for 31 yards, did not have a catch before the game was completely out of hand. And even after the game got out of hand, only 6 catches for 31 yards. Ball he did not come up with the end zone early in the third quarter that maybe he could have come up with. A play he did not make in the first half on a third down on a drive that stalled, and the Jets had to settle for a field goal. Nothing you can say good about this Jets performance. It was as bad as it could be on both offense and defense. And look, this season's gone. I think we know it's gone. The Jets did not build on that Houston performance. I mean, look, I'm not sure I was expecting them to build on the Houston performance, but you could at least hold out a little bit of hope. The team is now 3-7. And what's really frustrating is that it's not just that they were coming off a big win. It's also that they had 3 extra days to prepare, and Denver lost. Denver is the team that holds the 7th seed right now in the AFC, and they lost. And if the Jets had won, they would have only been 1 game out of the final playoff spot. And the Jets go out there and act like they don't care. This Jets team that told you all week that our season's turned around, they act like they don't care. It's too late to change anything. It's too late to save the season, but there are some changes that I'd like to see made just for the sake of accountability. Number one, I would cut Javon Kinlaw today. Get this guy out of here. This was a terrible signing. Robert Saleh, the one thing you could say for him is that he was pretty good at identifying defensive line talents, but in the area that was a clear blind spot for him was he just loved the guys that he played for him in San Francisco. Solomon Thomas is another example. Saleh just had a blind spot for these San Francisco guys. He felt like he could fix them, and he could not. And I don't think this is different here with Robert. I don't think Javon Kinlaw's season is any different if Robert Saleh's here, because it's not like Kinlaw was playing great when Saleh was with the team. How many dumb penalties is Kinlaw going to commit? A couple penalties in this game. How many times does he lose his gap control because he's just trying to pad his stats to try and get a new contract? Get this guy out of here. I don't need to see this guy anymore. Another move I'd like to see make, don't cut him, because you know what? He deserves to stay here the rest of the year. He doesn't deserve to sign with a new team. Bench Hasson Reddick. I'm done with this guy. You know what? This guy, all he cares about is getting paid. So you know what? We'll pay you. But you have to keep coming to practice, and you get to be embarrassed. You get to stand on the sideline with a baseball cap, and everyone can watch you. Everyone can watch you be benched by one of the worst teams in the NFL. Enough with this guy. And outside of that, look, it's just time to get the young guys the reps. It's time to bench all these old guys. Tyron Smith left this game with an injury. You don't like to see anybody get injured, but Olu Fashanu should just get the reps the rest of the season. Look, Olu Fashanu is going to be bad. He's not ready to play. He's got to hit the weight room this offseason because he's not physically strong enough to hold up at the tackle position. But you know what? Get him the reps, because game experience is going to help him. It's not going to hurt him. Tyron Smith, the thing that kind of flies under the radar about Tyron Smith's contract, I had completely forgotten about this. I actually got to give credit to somebody who asked a mailbag question a few weeks ago, because this person reminded me of this. Tyron Smith's playing on a lot of incentives this year, and most of the incentives are playing time based because of his injury history. So the Jets tried to protect themselves against injury by making most of Smith's incentives playing time based. Well, that's actually kind of backfiring on them, because Smith is playing poorly and he's collecting all the incentives. Now, again, the injury he suffered may make it academic, because he had to leave the game. After staying healthy the first 9 weeks, the injury bug for Tyron Smith has finally hit. But even if Tyron Smith is healthy, I think you shut him down. Tyron Smith can go. If Tyron Smith wants to go somewhere else, let him go healthy. Let him go there healthy next year. Or if he decides to end a very distinguished career with a bad Jets team, that's fine too. But the Jets should go out there and get Olu Fashanu more snaps. Look, they're starting to work Malachi Corley into the offense. I mean, I'm not super high on Malachi Corley. I think he's got a long way to go. I'm still angry with him for what he did last week against the Houston Texans. But another guy who really ought to start getting more snaps, because look, he's not going to do much with them, but at least at least let him start getting game reps in live game action. If it's going to happen for him, he needs a lot of work. So let him work on this stuff during games. And like any young player out there that the Jets think could benefit from the reps, it's time to put them on the field, because at 3-7, the season's over. But beyond that, I don't want to see guys who don't care anymore. I think I would not be opposed to anybody being benched if they loaf it, because you know what, maybe this is old fashioned. I feel like as an NFL player, you owe it to the fans to put out your best effort. Again, you get to week 17, week 18, and the season's going nowhere. I can live with that to a certain extent if you don't play hard. But to play like that, to act like you don't care in a game where you could have gotten within one game of the playoffs, what are you doing out there? Why are you even playing professional football at this point if that's how you're going to play? And I'm not a person who usually questions effort, because I've never played in the NFL. I know that these guys are very dedicated. You can't get to the NFL unless you're a really hard worker, unless you're super dedicated at your craft. Well, show some pride. Act like it. In that game, the Jets had a bunch of guys who acted like they did not care. And you know what? It's not even like, I understand, like in the NFL, sometimes you have to walk a fine line because you can't bench talented players. You need talented players to win games. But these guys aren't acting like talented players, and you're losing anyway. It's not like having these guys on the field is making you win. So if you're going to lose anyway, at least put guys out there who are going to give the fan base, going to give the fans some effort. So at least have some guys out there who are going to play hard, who are going to do their best. And if they lose, it's because they're not very good. They're not going to lose because they stink, because their effort stinks. They're going to lose because they stink. That was a disgusting performance. The New York Jets owe their fans an apology, as far as I'm concerned, because they wasted 3 hours of your time yesterday. 3 hours you could have spent doing something else, doing something more productive. I am so angry with this team. I'm so disgusted with this team. I'm sure you are too. But that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoyed the show and are listening on a podcast source, please give it a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Try to enjoy your Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.